In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a 9-step value scale using pencils that are made specifically for shading. Now, when we talk about value, we're talking about how light or dark something is in a work of art. So the first thing we want to do is we want to draw out our value scale. So I'm going to grab my lightest pencil. Now, all of these pencils have graphite in them, and the graphites have different levels of hardness or softness. The softer the graphite is, the darker or bolder the value typically will come out, and the harder the graphite, the lighter and softer it is, because less kind of comes off when you color. So I'm going to grab my hardest one here. This is a 4H pencil, and I have this little scrap of paper. Write your name and your class code on there, so 6-1 or whatever you are, just on the bottom. And we're just going to make 9 equal boxes. So this is 9 inches long, so I'm going to mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 is on the end. And remember, it's always that big line next to the number. And I'm also going to just trace around here and here, just to make my top and bottom line so it's nice and even. Then I'm just going to divide it like this. And then after I do this, I'm just going to label this lightest and darkest, so that I know where my light is and where my dark is. So I'm going to start with my darkest value first. So this is my softest graphite pencil. It's called a 6B. Okay, the way that I remember this is B kind of sounds like, or starts with B, like bold. And if you look at the back, there's a guide too. It shows you that the 6B is the darkest. So that's the softest graphite on here. So you're going to start by shading this, and you can see I'm pressing very hard. And you can see that this is nice and dark. Now I'd like you to fill this in nice and neat. Just for the sake of this video, I'm going to do it kind of quick, but I'd like you to go all the way to the edges like this, and try to make it as consistent as possible. You'll also notice that when I'm doing this, I'm coloring in the same direction, with the exception of like when I did the outer edges, I kind of just like trace them. And I'm trying to make this as dark and as consistent as possible. Try to get this to be as close to black as you can. Alright, so I have my first value, which is really dark. Now you'll notice here it's a little darker on the bottom and top. If you get that, just go over the whole thing kind of one more time to make it nice and even. So that's my darkest value. Now, there's more than 9 pencils in here. I'm going to skip some of them, but if you wanted to have more values, you could do that. So I'm going to skip the 5 and the 4B, and I'm now going to go down to a 3B. And you'll notice that this value is a little bit lighter. Now I'm still coloring hard with this, but not as hard. So part of it is how hard you color with your pencil, and part of it is the softness of the graphite. So you'll see that's a little bit lighter. Now I'd like you to fill these in completely. Now I'm going to move down to my 2B. So this graphite is a little bit harder than the last, so it would be a little bit softer. And then for here, I'm going to move on to my B, and you'll see my value is getting a little bit lighter now. So I'm pressing a little bit softer as well. Now I'm going to be moving on to an HB, which is basically like a number 2 pencil, and that's my mid-range value, okay? So that's right in the middle of my range of value. And remember, you're filling these all in completely nice and neat with good craftsmanship like we did here, but you can see it's getting lighter. Now I'm going to move on to my 2H. So I'm moving into the H's now, which are, oh wait, I'm sorry, to my H, which is my hard pencil. So these are going to start getting a lot lighter. And I'm going to color a little bit lighter, but I'm also going to rely on my graphite as well, the hardness of the graphite. Then I'm going to move on to my 2H. So the numbers, the higher the number, the more the description kind of matches. So the higher numbers on the H's mean harder as it goes up, and the higher numbers on the B's mean softer. So you can see here it's getting lighter, and I'm also softening up how much pressure I put on as well. Now I'm going to move on to my 3H. So now I'm going really soft. And now for my 4H, I want to go so soft and light that it almost looks white. Okay, so I want to have a nice high range of value in here. Whenever you have a high range of value in a shading drawing, that's when you wind up having a really interesting drawing, when you have that contrast. So I'd like you to do this, and then you should be ready after you've done this and you've learned how to use those pencils, how to move on to doing your shading drawing.